Ever wondered what all the fuss is about 2-5-1s or why you should learn to play over them? Well, in today's video lesson, I'm going to cover how to improvise over them effectively. This isn't about learning licks, this is about you learning how to solo over them musically with a full understanding of the harmony. So, in this two-part series, I'm going to cover everything you need to know on how to solo over 2-5-1s with ease. I've got lots of free resources to help you apply what you're learning in today's video. Remember, all the links are in the description to my website, guitarpracticezone.com, where you can download them for free. If this is the first time on my channel, then welcome. My name's Andy and I like to share videos all about the guitar, mainly about how to practice it effectively to help you make progress. Really helps the channel grow if you can like the video, and if you're not already a subscriber, then please consider subscribing. It really does help boost the channel. If you do, remember to hit that notification bell to be notified of future videos myself. Now on to today's content. The 2-5-1 in jazz is much like the 1-4-5 in popular music. It dominates the genre. As jazz guitar players, we know we need to be able to play over 2-5-1s, but why are they so important and where do they come from? Firstly, you've got two types of 2-5-1s. You've got major 2-5-1s and minor 2-5-1s. Now this video is solely going to focus on the major 2-5-1. It is more prominent, I would say, than the major one, and you really want to get a handle of that before you move on to soloing over the minor 2-5-1. One of the most important things to realise is that the 2-5-1 is part of a wider harmonic structure. The 2 and the 5 and the 1 chords are taken from what's called the harmonisation of the C major scale. If you take a C major scale, so C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, you can stack those notes in thirds and create chords. You get 7 chords. Now those chords are C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G dominant 7th, A minor 7 and B minor 7 flat 5. Each chord of those 7 chords is then assigned a Roman numeral in order. So C major 7 is chord 1, D minor 7 is chord 2 and so on. That gives us in the key of C a 2-5-1 being D minor 7 to the 5 chord G7 back to the 1 chord C major 7. So we take the 2-5-1 and we make a progression that sounds like this. This would be the same in every key when we harmonise the major scale. Every 2 chord will be a minor 7, every 5 chord a dominant 7th, and every 1 chord a major 7 chord. Now those 7 chords all have different functions, but we can break them down into 3 categories, and they are tonic, subdominant, and dominant. This is really helpful in knowing how a progression moves and starting to be able to hear progressions without even a guitar in your hands. So tonic chords sound like the key centre. Cheesy saying, but I think they sound like home. Sense of resolution when you get to it. Tonic chords are chords 1, 3 and 6. In the key of C, that is C major 7, E minor 7 and A minor 7. Now they're all grouped together because they have a similar sound. Chord 1 is the most important of those 3 chords, but they all sound very similar because they share notes. C major 7 containing C, E, G, B, E minor 7 containing E, G, B, D, and A minor 7 containing A, C, E, G. C will sound most like the key centre, but chords 3 and 6 do come close because of those shared tones. Subdominant chords create movement away from tonic chords, so movement away from that key centre, if you like, that home sound. There are just 2 subdominant chords. Now those are chords 2 and 4, so in the key of C, that is D minor 7 and F major 7. Again, like the tonic chords, they share some notes, hence the similarity in function. D minor 7 contains D, F, A, C, whereas F major 7 contains F, A, C, E, sharing 3 notes. And finally, dominant chords take you back to the tonic chord, chord 1, take you home. This is the remaining chords of 5 and 7. These contain the following notes: G7, G, B, D, F, and B minor 7 flat 5, B, D, F, A. Again, as you can see, they share notes, and you can look at that B minor 7 flat 5 as a rootless G9 if you like. So, an important thing to grasp is the fact that the 2-5-1 progression holds the characteristics of any great piece of music in that within it we find tension. The 2 chord starts us on that journey of tension. The 5 chord ramps it up a little bit, but it starts pinging us back to the 1 chord when that tension is resolved, until we go to some other weird chord. When we land back on that 1 chord, we get that reassuring feeling of being back onto a tonic chord. So practice point 1 is playing this progression in the key of C. with D minor 7, G7 and C, like so. So here's position 1, and I'll put the tab across the screen. Position 2. Now you can find other places on the neck to do this. You could use inversions, you could use roots on the D string. Do it with inversions, as I say. Get comfortable with finding those chords first in the key of C. Practice point 2 is you need to be able to get this down in every key. So if you've got to play a 2-5-1 in the key of A or B, or whatever it might be, you need to be able to do it. Now what I would do is take the circle of fifths and go counterclockwise. So you're going to call it actually the circle of fourths, because it moves in fourths if you go counterclockwise. And jazz musicians usually use it that way because that's the way most chord progressions move in the genre of jazz. Now, you don't need a guitar to practice this after a while. Once you're able to practice it on the guitar, it's something you could think about whilst walking the dog, whilst driving, whilst trying to get yourself off to sleep at night. You could go test yourself just with a random one. Right, what's a 2-5-1 in the key of A? Or try and mentally do what we're going to do now, which is work around the circle of fourths. So go, okay, key of C, 2-5-1 is D minor 7, G7, C. Next key is F, then it's G minor 7, C7, F major 7, that type of thing. The exercise, I have got a link to the PDF in the description with the chords if you're unsure what they are. I'll just demonstrate the first few keys, so it would go like this. 2 chord, D minor 7, 5 chord, G7, C major 7. Changing key to F. 2 chord is G minor 7, 5 chord is C7, 1 chord is F. Next key is B flat major, C minor 7, 2 chord, F7, 5 chord, B flat major, 1 chord. Then you work your way around all 12 keys counterclockwise on the circle of fifths, which we call the circle of fourths. So a fantastic extension activity for you here. Why not sing the chord tones as you move around the chords? So going root 3rd, 5th and 7th, singing them as we're playing the chord. Ba da 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 ba 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 ba, and so forth. Ba 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 da 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 ba 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 ba. As you can hear, I'm not a great singer. You don't need to be to practice this. The more you practice with singing and with your playing, it will make such a big difference to your improvising later on. As you get to grips more and more with this chord progression, you want to be able to spot it by ear and by sight when looking at chord charts. So dig out your real book or any other jazz standard book, flick it through, look through the different standards and just try and spot the 2-5-1s or just the 2-5s as well, because that does happen too. This is also very important to help you interpret where the music is moving harmonically. 2-5-1s signal key changes and when the key might fluctuate within a song. Say for instance this song, I Can't Give You Anything But Love. Now this is in the key of G, but you see here we have a D minor 7, G7, C. So we've got a temporary sort of key change there where it moves to the key of C, away from the main key centre of the song, which is G. So let's sum up what we've learned so far. We've learnt that 2-5-1 is a prominent progression in jazz, that tension and release is a fundamental part to its function. And we've learnt that you need to be able to play 2-5-1s in every key. So that is your first port of call. Make sure you can do it in A flat, you can do it in C. You don't just do it in one position, you can play it all over the neck. So the next phase is to be able to outline the chord changes as you solo over them with single notes using both scales and arpeggios. Getting the fundamentals down is really important, I can't stress this enough. If you don't get this solid foundation, further down the line you'll just hit a dead end and wish you could play over 2-5-1s better. In the past I've definitely had a tendency myself to go for the more exotic sounding scales or interesting hip things over the basics. And really I should have dug down more into the basic modes or even just the major scale before I attempted more advanced scales. A goal for any sort of beginner intermediate jazz guitar player is to be able to outline the chord changes as they occur. That is, playing the chord tones as the chords move. Now this is just a starting point. This is, like I said, a foundation. Later on you can learn more outside and interesting harmony, but firstly you need to get down what we call playing inside, so playing the notes of the chords or the scales as they change. This isn't just about being able to play those notes, it's also about training your ear to the sounds of those chords and the notes within them as they move. We're going to kick this section off with looking at arpeggios. So we're going to start very simply by when it's D minor 7, we're going to play the notes of that chord. When it's G7, we're going to play the notes of that chord, and so on. So that would be the following. We're going to play the root, 3rd and 5th and 7th in order for each chord. So for D minor 7, just to recap, that would be D, F, A, C. For G7, it would be G, B, D, F. And for C major 7, that would be C, E, G, B. For simplicity and clarity, we stick to playing quarter notes, so on the beat. So ba, 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 ba. That would sound something like this. Now you might be thinking, that's incredibly simple, this isn't very jazzy, but really this is about fretboard knowledge and being able to find these tones like that. So I challenge you, can you play that in different places without using the same tried and tested shapes? Mix it up. Start the root on the E string, the A string, the D string, the G string, the B string and the E string. You could play one note on each string, you could play 2 notes, 3 notes or 4 notes, mix up different combinations. This really helps improve your fretboard knowledge, which is essential when you're soloing in jazz context, because you don't have time to think about, oh, where's that, where's this? This kind of level of work and attention to detail will help push all this stuff into your unconscious, which will help when it comes to improvising. Again, I'm going to reiterate, sing what you play. It will have a big payoff later on. Practice point 4, you can play those chord tones in order. You can vary where you play it on the neck. Now we're going to mix things up a little bit. We're going to change the order in which you play them. Instead of starting on that root, we're going to start on the 3rd, the 5th and then the 7th. So we're going to go 3, 5, 7, 1 and then 5, 7, 1, 3 and then 7, 1, 3, 5. So they're still technically in order, but just starting at a different point within the sequence. Again, I could show you where to play all these, I could give you tab, but it's not going to help you. To really get the fretboard down, this is the work you have to do for yourself and make those connections. So let's just hear what that would sound like with the same pattern across all 3 chords. So let's go 3, 5, 7, 1. 5, 7, 1, 3. And finally 7, 1, 3, 5. Now it's a little step up. It's a little bit more interesting than just starting on the root. The root is predictable. There's such a thing as root bias, where musicians, when they're soloing over things, they go straight for that root. They see the chord and they go straight for it, and obviously it sounds fine, but there's more interesting sounding notes to go for, especially to start on. While that all sounds fine, and I do think it's important to be able to do, the thing we want to next go for is the way the notes within these chords can link really well together. And this always occurs at the semitone intervals, at the point of transition we're talking about here. So at the point of going from D minor 7 to G7, it's trying to find a semitone distance between 2 notes. So say for instance, if I go D, F, A, C, landing on that C at the end, the 7th, that 7th is a semitone above B, which is the 3rd of G. I could then go B, G, D, F. Now that F from the G7, the 7th, is a semitone above the 3rd of the C major chord, E. And then I could go E, G, B, C, or whatever, or E, G, C, B. This is a thing called the flat 7 to 3rd, and it occurs when chords move in fourths. So we get from D minor 7 to G7, we get the C, the 7th, resolving a semitone down to the 3rd of G, so B, and then again we get it between G7 and C, when we go from the 7th, which is an F, down a semitone to E, the major 3rd of C. It's these kind of things which make someone's jazz lines sound really fluid. So how can you extend your learning on this section of the lesson? Well, much like before, you could try this in different keys. So if you start working on, say, mixing up the order, so not starting on the root, starting on the 3rd, 5th or 7th, then try it in the key of F, try it in all the other keys. See if you can accurately and consistently find those chord tones over these 2-5-1s in different keys. When's this going to get more musical? Well, you can do it at this stage, definitely, and it can be as simple as things like the rhythm that you play the notes with. So, you know, including rests, not starting on beat 1, start on the and. So instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, ba ba, go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, ba da. So it's a little bit more funky. Incorporate techniques, slide into a note, pull-offs, hammer-ons. Maybe not bends or excessive vibrato, but certainly these things just make it a little bit more musical and a bit more less like an exercise. So let's move on to using scales. We've talked about arpeggios, but scales do sit with the arpeggios. The arpeggio notes themselves are taken from the scales, so there's a relationship between the two there. Now, most jazz textbooks, lessons, we just go, right, Dorian, Mixolydian, and Ionian. There's your modes that you can use over the 2-5-1. But what do they all mean? Well, if we go back to earlier in the lesson, we harmonised the major scale and we got 7 chords. We had C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G 7, A minor 7, B minor 7 flat 5, and then back to C major 7. We gave those chords Roman numerals. We called them, 1 to 8, with our D minor 7 becoming the 2, G7 being the 5 chord, and C major 7 being the 1 chord. Now, all of those chords are from the same key. Technically, if you wanted, you could just look at it and go, just use the C major scale. But unfortunately, it's not as easy as that. We do want to use these modes, and here's why. D Dorian, G Mixolydian, and C Ionian all come from that same sort of parent key center of C major, if you like. This is just a simpler way to view this. So a C major scale goes C, D, E, G, F, A, B, C. But we're going to just rename that Ionian, but you can just think of it as the C major scale. Now, the second mode of the major scale was built off that second chord, uses the same set of notes, but instead of starting on C, starts on D, and goes D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. Same notes, different order, if you like, because it's starting at a different point within the sequence, starting on D rather than C. We get the same for the Mixolydian. The notes from C major, but start on a G and finish on a G. So G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. A lot of people at this point think they're all the same notes. But what changes with each chord and scale relationship is the fact that the intervals of the notes change. So let's take the note D. In relation to the D minor 7 chord, that is the root. In relation to the G7 chord, it becomes a 5th. And then in relation to the C major 7 chord, it becomes a 9th. So as the chords change, even though we're using the same set of notes to solo with, the intervallic relationship completely shifts with each chord change. This means our thinking also has to shift with each chord change, which is why we can't just think C major when we have to think Dorian, Mixolydian, Ionian. Now I'm going to put the scales on the screen with the intervals. So here is D Dorian. This scale has the following intervals: root, major 2nd, minor 3rd, perfect 4th, perfect 5th, a major 6th, which is a real character note of Dorian that gives it its flavour, a flattened 7th, and the octave. For those of you that know your minor scale, this is the same as the minor scale, the natural minor scale, but instead of a minor 6th, it has a raised major 6th. Now here's G Mixolydian, with the intervals being root, major 2nd, major 3rd, perfect 4th, perfect 5th, major 6th, flattened 7th, and the octave. Really important distinction to note here is that this is virtually identical to the major scale. If you were to compare it to a G major scale, which would be G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, there's only one note difference and it's the 7th. So Mixolydian can be viewed as a major scale with a flattened 7th instead of a major 7th. C Ionian just contains those basic intervals of the major scale. So root, major 2nd, major 3rd, perfect 4th, perfect 5th, major 6, major 7, octave. I put together a PDF for those 3 modes, each scale in 5 positions covering the entire neck, so be sure to check the link in the description to grab that. Again, some of you still might be thinking, it's just C major, why can't I just think C major, it's so much easier. Yes, it's the same 7 notes being used over each chord, but it's the usage which changes. As the chords change, the notes that you want to go for become different. So, for instance, on D minor 7, it's the chord tones. So D, F, A, C become the go-to important notes. When it changes to G, G, B, D, F become the important notes. And then on C, obviously, C, E, G, B become the important notes. So those are notes you're going to target. The other notes you're going to bring in for colour and eventually you'll add in chromatics and more interesting notes to make it jazzier. But it's finding those chord tones. So really, yes, it is C major, but as those chords are changing, what you're trying to grab from that changes too. Jazz musicians frequently call that targeting notes. Practice point 5. Let's practice these 3 scales that we've got: D Dorian, G Mixolydian, and C Ionian, just picking 1 octave range on the guitar. Again, a bit like earlier when we did the arpeggios and I got you to think about starting in different places. Yes, learn the scales all over the neck, but also just go for micro positions. By that I mean, right, find a D on the E string, can you play it there? Find a D on the G string, can you play D Dorian there? Just mix it up where you're finding these. Practice point 1, play the scale ascending in 8th notes, up D Dorian, up G Mixolydian, and then up C Ionian. 2, play them descending, down D Dorian, down G Mixolydian, down C Ionian. Number 3, up 1, down the other, or the other way. Next one, don't start on the root of each scale. Try starting on the 3rd, which would sound like this. Try starting on the 5th. And then the 7th. Again, you could mix up that whole ascending descending thing just for variety. A final little scale activity in this practice point is to try the different intervals of the scale. So playing it in 3rds. 4ths. 5ths. 6ths. And 7ths. Again, you can mix up ascending, descending, vice versa. That's a really great practice strategy. Well, that brings today's video lesson to a close. If you've gained value from it, then please consider hitting the like button. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I do videos like this, lessons, backing tracks, gear demos. I'm sure you'd like it if you've enjoyed today's content. See you again soon.